Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Today our topic is sampling methods. A very important topic. We have already covered population, sampling frame, sampling determination methods. But now it's about sampling methods, that is different techniques available to select the sample. In our social life, in our organizational life, we are involved in sampling in different ways. Like for example, when we are at home, we are cooking something, we select a sample to taste something and to know the result for the whole population. So based on those units, we are going to apply the results, or we think about the taste for the whole population or whole what we are cooking. Same happens with when we have to develop perception about a country, about the individuals residing in a particular area. You are going to visit that particular area, you are going to evaluate their habits, their culture, their beliefs. So this is how we come over to our understanding about individuals or about a particular country. If you want to explore America, then you have to be there, you have to walk around and see things, that tangible and intangible factor. And this is how you would get to know about the living patterns of the individuals, and basically this is how we develop our perception. But do you really believe in such cases our perceptions are right, or do you think it's wrong? So sometime it's right and sometime it's wrong. Like when you are cooking and when you taste something, then in majority of cases you come over to the right conclusion. You can generalize the taste to whole what you are cooking. And when we have to make perception, so maybe the probability is you can commit mistake. Sometimes we feel like people are not good in this country. But is this the way to generalize the results based on 2, 3 or 4 observations, or based on 4 or 5 individuals whom you just met? So it means we are not scientifically driven. So we made a mistake about the sampling methods. So today we are going to discuss about the techniques or the methods available to select the sample. So my name is Adnan Reyaz. Sampling methods, also called the sampling types or the types of the sampling, and a very important topic. As a researcher, you need to be very much clear about different types of the sampling techniques available to you as a researcher, so that you could select the best one or the appropriate one. Broadly, we have 2 sampling types or 2 techniques broadly to select the sample. Number 1 is probability sampling and the second one is non-probability sampling. So as the name implies, in probability sampling, every elements have known chance or probability of being selected as a sample subjects. While in a non-probability sampling, the elements do not have any predetermined chance of being selected. It means in a probability sampling, all have equal chance or the probability to be selected as the respondent or as a subject. But in case of non-probability sampling, some individuals, things, events or whatever the unit of analysis are, so some of them do not have any chance of being selected, or some have so much chance, or maybe you are 100% sure they are going to be selected as a sample subjects. Well, by this narration, obviously you may have a guess, or it sounds like there are some issues with the non-probability sampling. In short, in non-probability sampling, because some are disadvantaged, so that disadvantaged segment or the elements So because of them, the generalizability of this sampling type is limited. And generalizability, I mean the application of the research to the whole population. But in case of probability sampling, generalizability is high as compared to all the types of the non-probability sampling, but it all depends on the purpose of the study, or it all depends on some other factors. It doesn't mean you cannot go for the non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is an advantage type of the sampling, and one should go if he has the resources and other ways. But in probability sampling, some individuals, rather all individuals, they have the equal chance of being selected. So that's why their generalizability, or we may call it, they are the true representative of the population. But in case of that is the inherent flaw. Well, selection of sampling types depends on what? Number one is the generalizability required, what I told you. Generalizability simply means it's about the application of the results to the whole population. So you can amicably say whatever the results you are getting, so that should be generalized or applied to whole population. But in case of non-probability sampling, you cannot generalizability is limited. Generalizability depends, because there are certain types of the non-probability sampling we're going to discuss later on. So in some cases the generalizability is so limited, but in some cases it's low, but it's not so much limited. All it again depends on the non-probability types of the sampling. Then time and other resources. For example, if I'm going for a non-probability sampling, then I don't need much time and resources. There is a type of the non-probability sampling which is much exercised in the management sciences and more particularly in the marketing researches, and that is the convenience sampling. And in convenience sampling, whosoever are readily available, so you can collect responses, you can interview them, you can give them the perform or the questionnaires. So this is how you are collecting data, those who are just available, right, based on your own convenience. But in case of probability sampling, you need to know the total count of the population, total elements of the population. And what we have discussed in our last video, you need to have the sampling frame, and that is the listing of the all subjects or all the elements. In normal circumstances, you don't need to develop such kind of listing or the sampling frame. It's readily available somewhere, you just need to approach it. But if you have to develop, like somewhere if you don't find, and if you are working on a comprehensive research project, maybe you are working on your PhD thesis or dissertation, then sometimes you have to develop the sampling frame. So in that case, you need to have the time, you need to have the resources, because it's going to be an added exercise for you. So if you have time and resources, better to go for the probability sampling. Said that is more generalizable. And last one is the purpose of the study. Purpose of the study is again a relative term. For example, my students who are just graduating, so I can ask them to go for the again convenience sampling. The reason is they are novice researcher, and I don't want them to follow all the protocols of the research in a very limited time period. I just want them to get to know about the research design or the basic protocols of the field study. So for that, they have to interview someone, they have to collect data through observation or questionnaire, and basically it's about their convenience. They can go in a market, in some other organizations, and getting the primary data. Basically the intent is just to get some understanding about the research. Rather, we are so much conscious about publication or about the implications of the study. For example, if I want to know the attitude towards COVID vaccination of those who are living in a remote area, rural area of Pakistan, and who have suffered the corona or COVID ever in their life in the past 1 or 2 years. So it means I cannot go for a convenience sampling. The purpose is attitude towards corona vaccination of those who have suffered from corona and who are living in a remote area. So I cannot go for a random kind of sampling or a convenience or other types of sampling. Now in this case, obviously the purpose itself is so particular, so I have to go for a purposive or the judgmental sampling. So all it depends on the purpose of the study. So these are the three ways that help us or that guide us to select the sampling method. Well, maybe they limit us to go for a particular type of sampling. Now coming over to the probability sampling. Probability itself means when all the elements have the known chance of being selected as a sampling subject. Keep in mind, when we talk about the probability sampling, it means we know the total count of the population. It means we know the total number of elements in the population. Then we can go and opt maybe the randomization, or maybe we can follow the systematic approach or some other approaches. But that total count or total number of elements are so important. So this is how it helps us to have the chance for everyone, because we have the pool available and we can select any. We further have 4 different types of the probability sampling: simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. So let's see what kind of these probability samplings are. To start with the simple random sampling, we also call it SRS sampling, and which is quite common in management sciences researches. Even sometimes, if you don't find the type of the sampling in a thesis or in a research paper, then normally the author has followed the SRS or simple random sampling. That is not mentioned, but impliedly they followed that SRS. And what we have already discussed, the generalization is high, and this one is the most common approach, because what I told you, you need to know the total count or total number of elements. As you are clear about the total number of elements, then it's quite easy to go for the simple random sampling, or otherwise you can go for a systematic sampling. But this one is most common, and here every element in the population has a known or equal chance of being selected. In simple random sampling, I have a pool available and I can randomly select some of the individuals or the units or the elements as a sample subject. That pool is available. For example, as a trainer or as a teacher, when I am in a session, so just to make sure if people or the participants are following me, so I can randomly ask question. So randomly means from my right side or left side, or someone sitting in front of me, so I can ask question or I can get their feedback. So in this case, the pool is obviously with me, and my randomization or the way I am asking the question, so it means everyone has the chance. So anyone could be selected from right or left or from everywhere. So that pool should be in my approach, or that pool should be in the approach of the researcher to go for the simple random sampling. Let's say if I have to make the random sampling, and some of the participants, uh, out of maybe 50, just 10 are sitting in the session. So it means some, as those who are not in the session, so they don't have a chance to be selected. So it means it's not a probability sampling. In a probability sampling, the pool should be in your approach, in your access. Common example of this SRS, simple random sampling, is the balloting. So in any lucky draw, when you have to select the name of any individual written on the small piece of paper, so it means that is a true example of simple random sampling, because all have the chance. So as you can recall, any kind of balloting, first they have to shuffle, and shuffling itself, though it's you are on a board, but this is how, depending on your luck, maybe you are going to be selected. So whosoever is going to select the name, but all those who are the candidate, or those who are the basically those who have applied for any kind of the draw, the lucky draw, so everyone has the chance of being selected. So that's why we call it the simple random sampling. Then the second method is a systematic sampling. Now here you can see in the systematic sampling, in this design, it involves drawing every nth element in the population, starting with the randomly chosen element between 1 and n. In a systematic sampling, you just need to know the nth number, nth value, or somewhere we also call it the kth value. So in short, you just need to know a value, maybe 4, 5 or 8, and we need to develop a system. Again, what I have discussed, as you know, the total count of the population, and the population is in your approach. So in the previous case, we could randomly select some of the individuals, some of the units, but in this case we have to develop a system, and we are going to select maybe every fourth of the element, or maybe every seventh of the element. So this is how whole the population is going to be covered. So you just need to know a value, maybe 4, 7, 8 or 9. So maybe every ninth element is going to be selected, and this is how we are going to cover whole of the population. There is a very simple formula for that, and that is the nth value. How you gonna figure out the nth value? It's about the total elements, the total count of the population. What I told you, you need to know it, and then divided by the sample size. Let's say we have 100 elements in the population, and we have to select 25%, means 25 individuals as the subjects, as the respondents, and that's what we have already discussed the criteria. 25% of the whole population can be a sufficient sample size. So it means here we have the 100 elements divided by 25. It means the fourth, every fourth for all the 100. So the first fourth, then the 8th, then the 12th. So this is how we are going to cover whole of the population, and that is literally a very better way, because we are going to cover whole of the population from left to right. In this case, you can now see we have 14 individuals, and we are selecting every third. Keep in mind, sometimes we start from the third, or otherwise from the third we can start from any one of them. We can start from the 1, 2 or the third, but we have to select each and every third element coming in the or falling in that population. So here you can see the second one is selected, but then the third one, then the next third, then the third, and then the last one. So this is how we collected data. Maybe in this case it was interview, or maybe it was just an observational study. So every third was investigated, or every third was taken as a subject. The last case was, as you could see, it was about a random type of the sampling. So the first selected, then the third one, then the third one or the sixth one, and then the next second one, then the third, then so it means it's a kind of the random approach. We got to have the again here I can see we have the six subjects from this population selected as a subject or as a respondent, but that was truly a random approach. But in this case we develop a system, and yes, we selected 5 of them, and based on the total number of population. Well, here we again have the example. So nth value, in this case we got 20 respondents or 20 elements in the population, and for 20, obviously if we are going for 25% of the sample size, then it means 5 is the sample size. 20 the 25% of the 20 is the 5. So by 20 divided by 5, it means we got the nth value as a 4. So what I told you, from the first 4 we can start from any of the element. It can be 1, 2, 3 or 4. Maximum we could go up to 4. We could start from the fourth one or second one or the first one, but in this case we started from the third, but we have to select every fourth element now. So the third selected, then it means the seventh, then again after the seventh it's again the fourth one, so 11th, then 15th, and then 19th. So finally we came over to our sample size, and that is the 5 out of 20, and we just got to know the nth value. What I told you, somewhere you're gonna also have it as the kth value, but you just need to know a value, and that particular following the fourth one or seventh one or the ninth one is going to be selected. The third type of probability sampling is stratified sampling. As the name implies, it's a way to split the population into similar groups, the stratum or strata, that have similar characteristics but that might respond differently in a survey. For example, university students divided into juniors and seniors, and employees stratified into staff, supervisors and managers. In simple terms, we have to make groups, or we have to go for grouping. And why to make a group and on what basis? It depends on the purpose of the study. Why we should go for a stratified sampling? Because when we can see very obvious or visible group differences, it's basically about the purpose of the study and the criteria of the grouping, the way to group them. For example, if I can see my topic of study is emotional stability, then it means I can go and develop the stratums based on the age groups, because when someone who is senior and who is not an adult or a teenager, so they are more emotionally stable. After the passage of time, we get our neural connections developed, and the connection between emotional and rational brain is developed. So we become more emotionally intelligent and we get more emotional stability. And teenagers or youngsters, they are lacking this quality or this skill. So it means what I told you, maybe it's my assumption, but based on that assumption, my topic is emotional stability, so I have to make a group of those who are senior and who are junior. So that is basically the stratums or the strata. And then maybe my topic is a turnover intention, and I just want to know the turnover intentions of the sales force. So automatically things are flashing in my mind about the indoor and outdoor salesperson, because someone who's working in a indoor sales, he is not in a very tough condition, because you are in your office, and normally in the showrooms or within the outlets or within the offices, the environment is so cozy. But if you are working as an outdoor salesperson, then you are in a very tough environment. There is extensive traveling is involved, and you have to face the challenge of work to family conflict, because no one knows when you are going to be free from the meeting with the client or the customer. So it means I can have an idea, so why don't I compare the attitude or the intentions of those who are working in the sales department, but in the indoor and outdoor. So where I can see the visible differences between the groups or among the groups, so I can go for the stratified sampling. But all it depends, there is no uniform groupings available, and we cannot be 100% sure like these are the groups. Grouping can be based on the gender, male, female. Again, it depends on the purpose. Somewhere you can think there are differences between these two groups. The attitude and perception of male and females about certain areas, certain factors, phenomena are different. The grouping can be based on the tenure of employment. It can be the departments where you are working. It can be the position, the level, managerial or staff level, or even it can be the nationality. There are many ways to develop the stratums or the stratas. But keep in mind, there is homogeneity within the stratum and more heterogeneity between stratas. It means homogeneity means they are like or they are similar. It's a degree of the similarity between or among the individuals. And heterogeneity, it's mean about the diversity or the differences. Here we can see these are the two groupings. So the blued ones are at a left side and the greens are at a right side. We can take it as a male and female. So we have the two groups, and we have to investigate, and then we have to compare the attitude, perception, understanding or the behavior of these two groups. So statistical efficiency is greater in stratified samples, and subgroups can be analyzed. So as you collect data, so you can make a comparison. But here this table is so important in cluster sampling. We gonna have a discussion on it, but cluster is also a kind of the group. But keep in mind what are the differences in stratified sampling. There is more heterogeneity in intergroup. Now inter means between or among, and intra means within something. When we talk about intercity transport, it means the transport which is connecting two cities. And when I talk about the intracity transport, so it means the transport service which is available within the city, in the city. So when I call it intra-communication, then it means the communication we have with ourselves. So we are a chatterbox, we are every time talking with ourselves. And when I talk about the intercommunication, then it means the communication between or among individuals. So here it's about the intergroup. So intergroup means the groups may be male and female. There is more heterogeneity in case of the stratified sampling. It means the groups are different. At one side they are the male or the female, so groups are different. So maybe the bases are the junior and senior, so it means the group is obviously different. The group units are male and female or the junior and seniors, right? But there is more homogeneity in the intra-group. So it means the elements are going to be the same. So let's say male and female. So in the female groups, all are going to be the females. So on that basis, obviously they would be sharing different ages, different height, different weight, different perception about the things. But since our purpose is, in case of male and female, let's say we are just investigating the switching intentions. So for switching intentions, So we have the gender as the basis of the stratums. In group A, where we have the females, so all are the females. So intra-group there is more homogeneity, and between group, so there is more heterogeneity because the groups are different from each other. It is contrasted from the cluster sampling, which is quite opposite of it. In a cluster sampling there is more homogeneity, intergroup homogeneity and intragroup heterogeneity. It means within the group elements are different from each other, but the groups itself they are quite same. We're gonna have discussion on it later on, but at this moment here you can see male and female depending on the purpose of the study. I can see there are 120 males and 24 females. The total count is 144, and just getting the 25% of the population, I got 30 subjects, and for females 25% of females in this group, that is 24. So I got 6 females on board for this survey or for this study, and ultimately for 144 the sample size had to be 25% of the population. So I got 36 individuals or responses. But there can be a question about what if I have 100 elements in the population, so I have to go for 25 individuals on a safer side. So 25 is basically the sample size, but in case of the stratified sampling, if I have to go for 25, then what can be the total constituency of the group? Like how many should be the male and the female in case of the gender, if that one is the basis of the stratification. So let's say out of 100, if I have to develop the group, then how should I go? I just know the question is obviously quite valid. I know the sample size should be 25, but out of 25, how many should be the male and the females? So there we got to know either we should go for a proportionate stratified sampling or disproportionate stratified sampling. So here I got a very simple example of the proportionate stratified sampling. In this case, I have 120 males in a population and 24 females. Collectively, it's 144. So since I'm going for the proportionate stratified sampling, so 25% of 120 is 30, and 25% of 24 is 6. So finally, the whole sum is 36, and it means I amicably satisfied all the criteria what we have discussed before. 25% of the females, 25% of the males, and 25% of the whole population. But sometimes we are quite stringent about the sample size criteria, that is the 25%, and I should be getting 25% of this 144, and that is 36. But if the researcher feels that a group looks unrepresented, let's say here in this case, what if I feel 6 females are not enough, I think I should go for 10 interviews. So I can make a trade-off. For example, now you can see this one is what we have discussed already about the proportionate stratified sampling. Total count is 144 and sample size 36 of 25% of the population, and we had 120 males, 30 we selected 25%, and 24 were females and we selected only 6. But I feel no, it's not good enough to just interviewing 6 females. I can go for 15, and I should go for 15 interviews of the females. So now I am making that disproportionate. The the criteria is 25% of the whole population. So I am getting 15 responses from the females. So because of that trade-off, it becomes 21 males who were interviewed. So we are quite conscious, we are stringent about the total sample size, that is 36, but we had to make that trade-off. The reason is sometimes your population is so limited in case of a particular strata. Let's say if I have to examine some responses of a group and only 4 persons are in that group, so what about the proportionate sampling? It means I have to collect the response from just one individual, so that literally not make a sense. But if they are just 3, so it means now the figure is in a points in a friction. So for that, sometimes by hook and crook we have to go for a disproportionate sampling. Here we got another example, that is the example of the organizational hierarchy. At the upper level we got 8 elements, 8 officers or managers are working at upper level of management. They are general managers maybe. At a middle level of management we got 12, lower level 28, staff level 40, and ultimately it makes 88 individuals or elements in the population. The total count of population is 88. Now 25% of the population, out of it we interviewed 2. From middle level we interviewed 3, from lower level we interviewed 7, and from staff level just 10. Now obviously that all are the 25% of their respective group of the population, but I feel just 2 is not, it never looks good to me, and even 3 from the middle level, again it doesn't look good to me. So what I am going to do, I have to make a trade-off. I am selecting 4 from the upper level, 6 from the lower level. Because of that trade-off, obviously I have to cut the figure from the lower and staff level, and finally the resultant or ultimate sample size is 25% of the whole population. But here I made the trade-off, and that is quite acceptable. There is obviously no need to be worried about it. But there is a very valid question, and that question is how to select individuals. Like, I know if I have to interview 6 from the staff or 10 from the staff, then should I go on my convenience? I mean, should I follow the convenient way, or should I go for the random way or the systematic way? So basically in this approach, the recommended way is you have to follow any of the probability sampling technique, because this one is all about the stratified sampling falls under the category of probability sampling. So for that you can follow either the systematic approach or the simple random sampling at the lowest level, where you have to make the grouping. You have selected the sample size, the proposed sample size or assumed sample size. Then you have to either collect data on a random basis or through developing a system. That's what we have just discussed. It's not about you are just making a group and collecting responses on your convenience. If you are following this approach, we call it a quota sampling, where again the groupings are very much there, but there are some disadvantaged group or group members who doesn't have any chance of being selected. In this case, in the stratification, all the stratas are going to be examined by following either the systematic approach or the random approach. Then we have a clustered sampling. Again, a very effective sampling technique, provided you are following all the protocols. And cluster sampling means dividing whole population in different groups, but it offers more heterogeneity within groups and more homogeneity among groups, the reverse of what we have studied in a stratified sampling. Generalizability is limited but not much limited, because it's again the probability type of sampling. Generalizability is limited to related clusters only, and economical in terms of cost and energy. Now clustered sampling, it's a bit tricky, it's a bit difficult to understand for some of the students. Basically it's about a grouping, but that grouping is we have more homogeneity between or among the groups and more heterogeneity in the group. It means the elements are quite different from each other, and it means the groups by themselves, they are quite same. Well, to know more about it, let's see some examples. And keep in mind, we have already discussed homogeneity means they are like, they are same, the extent to which they are, the members, the units, individuals or entities are same. And heterogeneity means the dissimilarity or the diversity among the members or among the units. Now here we got some examples of the cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, what I told you, the elements within the group, they differ from each other, they are not same, but the groups itself, they are same. For example, if I have to, like if I am food inspector and I am visiting a school where the school by themselves, they are providing the mealing facility to the students, and I want to know if it satisfies the nutritional criteria or not. I mean the quality of food as well as the diversity of the food what they are offering. So as a food inspector, I am going to collect some of the boxes, the lunch boxes of the students. Let's say in a class there were 18 students, so I collected 4 of the lunch boxes. So these are the lunch boxes. So now these are the groups, right? One lunch box is a group because in that lunch box there are the elements or there are the units. So I am going to see what is there. So in the first lunch box, I can see here we have the sausages, then we have the sandwiches, then we have the cucumber and maybe some fries. I opened another one and I can see the same composition, the sausages, sandwich, cucumber and the fries. Then in the third one, then in the fourth one, I got the same. So by examining all these 4, I can generalize the results to all the lunch boxes of the students, of the 18 students. I don't need to open all the lunch boxes. I randomly selected some of the lunch boxes of the students out of 18. So now we got 2 conclusions. Number 1, that sampling is based on the sample of the groups. So these 2 points are important. Number 1 is I have to make a sample not of the elements, like I am not selecting the elements, rather I am selecting all the subjects. And second one is I am going to make the sample of the groups or of the what we could see in this case it was the lunch boxes. So basically sampling in case of cluster is about the groups. Out of 18 groups, I selected 4 groups. I could select maybe 5 or maybe 3 depending on my limitation or my convenience. But in those groups, the second criteria is I have to, that is not an absolute criteria, but that is a sufficient criteria. I have to examine each and every element within that group or within all the groups. So in this case, what I did, I examined is this, what's that? Then I got to know it was sausages, then the sandwich, then the cucumber. So this is how I were heading, examining other lunch boxes. So while taking another example, let's say I just want to know the job satisfaction of the, I'm working as a researcher. I got a project to know the job satisfaction of employees working in different bank branches. So now you can see bank branches, there is more heterogeneity within the groups, within the cluster. So it means you can see the hierarchy. There is a CEO, then there is a vice president, there is a regional vice president, the bank manager, then the auditor, then the junior, senior. So we have the hierarchy in the bank branches, like there is a branch manager, there is an auditor, there is a cashier, and there is a loan officer, maybe there is a relationship manager, there is a security guard, but they have to report to regional vice and vice president and the CEO. So we are limited to branch manager, and I just want to know the satisfaction level of employees working in different bank branches. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to select a few of the branches. I'm not going for the consensus. I am going to select few branches. Out of 20, maybe 5 branches are selected in the capital city. But following the other 2 criterias, now those 5 branches which are selected, so they are going to be examined by all the elements. Like all the individuals in the bank branches are going to be interviewed, or going to fill the questionnaire, or whatever the instrument I'm going to use for my research. Now you can see the heterogeneity among the unit elements. Like we are treating the branch, the bank branch, as a one group. So it means I had to go for the sampling of the bank branches. Out of 20, I selected 5 of them. So it's not about individual sampling, it was the sampling of the group. Out of 20, I selected 5. Then for all those 5, the second criteria, what I told you, it's a sufficient criteria, it's not a necessary criteria, but I have to examine, or I have to collect responses from all those who are working in the bank branch, because I know they are different from each other, more heterogeneity. So heterogeneity means I am going to interview the branch manager, then I am going to interview the relationship manager, the cashier, the security guard, and all those who are working, because they are dissimilar, and all those who are going to be selected. So that is basically the example of the cluster sampling, and you can think about the cluster bomb. And cluster bomb, why we call it the cluster bomb? Because that one is made of the different small bombs. It's a combination of different types of the small bombs, so that's why they called it the cluster bomb. And there is another example of the clustered sampling. We call it the area sampling as well, in which, let's say, I have to in marketing, that area sampling is very much used when we have to go for a test marketing. Then we are going to select some of the areas which are quite similar, like A, B or C areas, where we feel that the individuals are quite diverse. Someone having good purchasing power, someone are just struggling, and someone are adequate, they are at a moderate level. So I'm going to select maybe 2 or 3 areas, and there I am going to monitor or examine my product to see the results. Instead of randomly covering all the cities, I am going to cover limited area to know the response of the individuals, because I feel people are quite diverse there, and diversity includes maybe the purchasing power, or maybe about different ethnicity, or like that. The second broad type of sampling is non-probability sampling, and we have already discussed briefly. In non-probability sampling, some of the elements in the population do not have any probabilities attached to their being chosen as sample subjects. So some have more chances. There is, we can call it, there is unequal chance distribution, or maybe some are going to be selected and some are not going to be selected for sure. So you are 100% sure like these are some of the elements who are not going to be taken on a board in non-probability sampling types. There are different types of the non-probability sampling, and obviously they cater different purposes, but simply stated there is unequal chance distribution to the elements to be selected as a sample subjects or a respondents. In management sciences, since majority of studies are for marketing, HR, management are through survey interviews or survey questionnaires, so we call it the respondents. And such sampling type is used when researcher is less concerned with generalizability. Generalizability means you are not much concerned about the application of the result, applying the result to the larger population, and more concerned with obtaining some information in a quick and inexpensive ways. So what we have discussed, when you are more concerned to know the research design, to collect data in a very efficient way, in a timely manner, then you can go for a non-probability sampling. And the first one is, in this case, is the convenience sampling, snowball sampling, purposive sampling, and quota sampling. About the convenience sampling, it refers to the collection of information from members of the population who are conveniently available to provide it. It is mostly used in exploratory and basic academic researches. Researchers looking for some basic information quickly and efficiently can resort to convenience sampling. It is simplest form of sampling, least reliable and cost effective. So in convenience sampling, as a researcher, if I have to collect responses from maybe 4 of the elements or four of the subjects, then I'll go and visit the market and whosoever is available, so I am going to interview them or collect responses. Now in this case, you can see those who were not close to the researcher, so they are disadvantaged, and they couldn't or they didn't have any chance of being selected as a sample subject. For example, in Islamabad, I have to collect responses from 20 individuals to know their attitude towards a particular brand. So in Islamabad, I can visit Jinnah supermarket and I can collect responses from 20 individuals. But what about those who are there in a F10 Markaz market or in a blue area or somewhere else? So obviously they didn't have any chance of being selected. So based on my convenience, I selected a sample size. But if I am in a Lahore, so I have to collect again responses, so I can visit a Liberty market and collect responses. But I never visited the mall, the other markets in Lahore. Who was there for a shopping in a Fortress Stadium or in an Emporium? So they didn't have any chance of being selected, and obviously they were not selected, and that's why that generalizability is limited, because a person who used to go for a shopping in Emporium malls or such kind of malls, so maybe they have different perception about the things, or maybe different behaviors. So we cannot say by collecting data from any particular market, so that result can be generalized to all the markets of the Lahore or all the consumers and customers of the Lahore. All it depends, the convenience sampling depends on the convenience of the researcher. So conveniently, wherever he finds the individual, so he can collect data, and the data distribution, the collection of data and distribution is quite unequal. So that's why we have a lot of concerns about the generalizability. So here we got another example, and we have 100 members, 100 elements in this population, and we had to go for 20, and as a researcher I got connection with these 20, so I just collected data from these 20, in a row in a series, and they were disadvantaged and they were not contacted to provide the data, so they didn't have any chance of being selected. The second one is snowball sampling. In snowball sampling, it's also called the chain referral sampling, is a way of sampling technique in which the samples have traits that are rare to find, and existing subjects provide referrals to recruit samples required for a research study. Now, as the name implies, it's like a snowball, and as the snowball is going to move, so it gets bigger and bigger. The simple philosophy is the subjects are hard to find, and as you get to know a subject and through the interview or other means to collect data, you have to request them to give the context of the other subjects or other persons falling in the same category. So subjects are in a best position to refer other subjects. For example, if you have to interview those who are drugs addicted kind of person, then since it's a quite sensitive matter and you want to know why and how they fell victim of this kind of addiction, so by the first interview you have to request them, because they are in a contact and they know who else is there in such kind of addiction. So you gonna get the contact of some other, and then that snowball would start moving. And as you can see in this picture, the first person, and we assume that he's addicted from any kind of drug, and he's going to give you the contact of 2, and these the second one is going to give you the contact of others. So this is how we are getting expansion in terms of our data collection, or to know more about the subjects. And the same example, as we can see, it's about a man who gave us a reference of 2, and they gave us another 3 references individually, and these 3 gave us some other references. So this is how that chain is getting expanded. So we have another example of like if you are the car lover, if you are quite crazy about the different brands of the cars. In Pakistan we have a Cholistan Jeep Rally, and there they use a very customized kind of the Jeeps, and obviously they have to much invest on it, and everyone cannot go and do that. If you get connected with anyone, and through interview you can request them to not only guide you about who else is there in these kind of passions, rather they can also help you in that interview process. Obviously people, they don't have time and you have to take the appointment, but that referral or that reference is going to help you not only to guide about whosoever is also the participant of that the Jeep Rally in a Cholistan, but also they would contact the other person if they are available for the interview. So this is how you can make an expansion, and this is how you get to know about how they make the customization of their cars, and how they feel when they enjoy that victory, the success, and what dragged them to be the part of that rally. So if you have that kind of purposes, the objective of the study, then obviously it's little difficult, but this is how you can make a connection and go up to so many individuals. The third one, in a non-probability sampling type, is purposive or judgmental sampling. Purposive or judgmental sampling involves the choice of subjects who are most advantageously placed or in the best position to provide the information required. It is useful for answering certain types of research questions. Now in snowballing, that was very particular, and it was too difficult for the researcher to, based on his own efforts, to identify and to approach the elements as a subject, to make elements as a subject. But in case of purposive sampling, again the purpose of the study is quite unique and everyone cannot be the subject of the study. So it means first you have to, according to the purpose of the study, you have to be very judgmental. You have to identify individuals who are in a position to answer your questions. So you need to be very particular. That is basically the crux of this purposive sampling. Here in this case, we got these some smileys, and the purpose is I want to identify 3 happy emojis with eyebrows. So these all emojis, either they have eyebrows or they have they are happy. So there are very few who are not only happy but also has the eyebrows. So finally I got these 3 who not only happy but also have the eyebrows. So my purpose was to identify only those who have eyebrows as well as those who are happy. So I was very particular about my purpose of the study. So all they cannot be, obviously they cannot be the subject of the study. Here I got like here we have the population, and I had to interview some of them, those who could respond according to the purpose of the study. So here you can see all reds were actually made up the sample of the study. And here I got few examples like women at a leadership position from minority groups. So it means in organization everyone is not the subject of the study. It's about just the women, and second one who belongs to the minority group. So first I have to identify those. Obviously, especially in South Asia, there are so much I would say the challenges for the women, and the purpose here is to interview those who by their efforts got the leading position, but also those who belongs to the minority group. Again, the purpose is driving behavior of individuals face drastic accident in life. So anyone who faced a drastic accident, so assumption is that they are not going to show any reckless behavior, but I want to know to what extent they are disciplined about their driving. So obviously all drivers never constitute the population of the study. The population is basically only those who have faced drastic accident, and now I want to see how well they are driving. Then parenting attitude towards the special kids. So first I have to identify those who have the special kids, and then I'll go and ask questions about and see what kind of attitude they have about their special kids. The last one is the quota sampling. In quota sampling, the researcher assigns quota to different groups and collect data from individuals according to that specified quota. Simply stated, it's like a stratified sampling where we have to make a group, and then by making different groups we have to, at first the population is segmented into mutually exclusive groups. So first there can be again some bases. Here in this example we have the basis in terms of the years or the age. So the basis of the grouping can be any, but the groups should be mutually exclusive, or they should be non-overlapping. Like for example, here we have the group from 11 to 21 years. So if the second group could have been 21 to 31. So if anyone who was 21 years of the age, so where he had to fall, like should he fall in the first group or the second group, because in this case the example what I'm giving you, it's about the overlapping group. So they should be mutually exclusive. There should not be any confusion for any individual or for anyone who's the researcher from where to collect data. So they should be mutually exclusive. And then as I have established the groups or the group mechanism, then I have to collect the data on my convenience. So that's what is basically the differentiating point between the quota sampling and the stratified sampling. In stratified sampling, you have to go, the grouping is same like what we do in a quota sampling and a stratified sampling, but in stratified sampling you have to go for a probability types of the sampling technique. So probability sampling means it can be the systematic sampling or it can be the simple random sampling, but here you have to go for a non-probability sampling, and non-probability means you can go for the convenience sampling, whosoever is available. If I have to collect data from males and females from the metropolitan areas of Pakistan, I can visit Islamabad and Lahore, but I never visited Karachi. So it means based on my convenience I collected data from the two groups, but I never contacted anyone from Karachi. So it means that is convenience sampling, and yeah, of course, the generalizability or the true representativeness of the sample is a question. Again, just to have the recap of this quota sampling, the quota sampling is same like the stratified sampling. You have to go for a grouping. As the groups are established, then you have to collect data on your convenience, on whosoever is readily available or easily available, so you can collect data from them. And that is at contrast to the stratified sampling, where by making the groups you have to collect data either following a system, the systematic sampling, or through the simple random sampling approach. You should have the pool available and everyone should be in approach. So that's all from now. Thank you very much.